I heard somebody say one time, anytime we don't have hope, we're partnering with the enemy.
Oh, bingo.
So
Bingo.
you got to have hope if you're a believer. That's
Yeah.
what it's about, believing.
Yeah.
Right? A believing believer.
So, Leigh, do we, to bridge the gap, do we wait till after November 5, after the Civil War begins?
Well, that's a loaded question right there.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Pastor and Wife podcast.
We welcome you to hang out with us today.
I'm Hansel.
I'm Natalie.
And I'm Leigh.
Wait a minute.
We're so excited to have our first guest to interview. And also, we're not in our normal location.
Yep.
We're at my parents' home, and we're here with my sister, Leigh Sloan.
Awesome.
So
Yes, and we're not the sister wives, but we are sisters.
we're sisters. And look, I have a picture.
Oh, yeah.
I am a wife, though.
Show the
You are
picture.
a wife, just not this wife. Since we're at my mom and dad's house, this is our picture.
Aww.
Nice.
Leigh has always been I don't know. I always I'm thinking of the word protector. Like that's not the right word.
I made you sit down, and I taught you all the time.
You're my teacher. Yes.
Teacher.
Oh,
That's for
okay.
sure.
All right.
We had a little school in our backyard, and I would teach you.
Nice.
That's why she's so smart. Take full credit for that.
Cool.
Yeah, so this will be fun.
Yeah. So, Leigh, tell our viewers who you are.
I'm Leigh Sloan.
Yeah.
I'm now an author. I can say I'm an author now.
Award-winning, though.
Award-winning author.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my book, actually. I have my book, Pride and Privilege. Pride and Privilege, Expand Your
Nice.
Influence in Cultural Chaos. So, I just wrote a book this year, and I've done a lot of different things. I've been a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved in political endeavors. I've run a couple political campaigns. I ran my
Nice.
own political campaign.
Yes.
I just do a lot of projects, and I'm a teacher. I have a platform called Brave Nation that I started, and we actually started with conversations. You and I had conversations, and I started a podcast. You guys you're way cooler with your podcasting. But I started a podcast a few years ago just to start having what I call brave conversations. Mm-hmm. And I've always been somebody who wants to put my foot in stuff that nobody else wants to talk about, and just get it all out there. And so we started having conversations about things that maybe I wasn't supposed to talk about in church or from the pulpit,
Mm-hmm.
So I just like getting into it about anything and everything, and and that's why Hansel and I have really good conversations.
Yeah,
we get together.
we could talk for forever.
Yeah,
I was going to say you two are so much alike, and I think God has probably used you to train me for him because it's like the same thing. Like I didn't have to learn anything new. It was just keep track of your keys and
Yes.
Natalie
your
keeps
wallet.
us in line. She keeps us in line. Yeah.
You just do your thing, and I'll just pick up other pieces.
Yeah.
It's balanced.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So on my platform, I also train people in how to, find their purpose, and then I'll be developing some other classes around my book and things like that. So I like to teach.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. My question is, why are 32 million Christians not voting this election?
Well, I mean, I guess I start with the positive. A lot of them are, right?
Yes.
So it is good to know. But you part of, voting to me is part of my Christian stewardship of my life. Just like I would take care of my body, I would take care of my kids. I would taking care of the things in your life. My community is how I engage in my community is through the voting process that God affords us, through our particular system of government. In the Bible, there wasn't that system of government. So, the Bible doesn't speak to it directly, but we are supposed to steward our relationships and really we, the people, are supposed to be the government, in a sense.
Right.
So so I think people just haven't had enough training and teaching and understanding. But the other part of it is politics has become a dirty word.
Okay, good point.
And I think people in the church don't want to be associated with anything dirty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
we want to stay away from what's dirty. And so we say, hey, I'm not political. And we say that kind of like, I'm good, I'm not political.
Yes, I'm not political.
Oh.
Right? And so what I call this white glove syndrome, where we have our white gloves on. We're like, well, I don't touch those things. Those things are beneath me. That's not godly. That's not, and so we have this kind of, and some have it more than others, but we have what I call religious isolationism, where we're backing away from political discourse, and all the whole political process because we think it's ugly and not becoming of a Christian. But what we end up doing is it's kind of pharisaical, because what we end up doing is putting our white gloves on and saying, look at how holy I am
Okay.
for not engaging, because I don't do that because it's beneath me. But the world around me is kind of going to hell in a handbasket, and I'm good though over here, right? And then you can work in eschatology to that, people's different eschatology, and that kind of just creates this separatistness, I guess.
Yeah, what we were talking about in the Halloween episode is Halloween Pagan, and we were talking about like the verse where it says, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, and people use that verse a lot to distance themselves from something that's ugly or something that's not holy. When what we were saying is we should, and what you're saying is that we should engage and get our hands dirty, and so that we can affect change, so we can make it lovely, and holy and pure.
It's in the right way, and that's the thing, because there is a lot of toxicity in politics.
Yeah.
Obviously, so we have to delineate like what is wrong about it and how can we engage in a good way. So I use the 3 gloves metaphor, so you have the white gloves, right? Where you disengage and you're like, oh, look at how perfect I am. And then you have on the opposite end, you have the boxing gloves. Yeah. Where you're just constantly fighting. Right. And you're like, hey, why don't you fight? Well, get in the fight and just fight. And that's more cancel, right? We have, maybe Natalie would be the white glove if you could, you could look at these different extremes. And we all tend toward one or the other.
But just look at our shirts.
Yes, look at this.
Okay, yours says...
Mine says love always.
Mine says, we the people are pissed.
That's a perfect example of boxing glove and white glove. And it's even white. So, but there's a reason I have a different kind of glove on the cover of this book. It is a gardening glove. And that's what I think we should be doing, is engaging. We're getting in the dirt, right? Right. We're not mudslinging. Right. But we're cultivating something beautiful. And that and that's really difficult, because we have to like toe the line of like, how do we do this in love, but how do we also confront, And that's, to me, what Jesus did when he walked the earth. He knew how to walk that line. Right. And he, because in the Garden of Eden, what does it tell us to do? It says to work the land, and that word work actually means cultivate. Cultivate, right. So actually it is an essential part of our Christian walk, and what we were created for is to cultivate the world around us. Not just physical land, but to cultivate our culture. The word culture comes from the word cultivate. Cultivate, right. Right. So,
that's really good. So this, you're bringing me to another question. So I think everyone knows we live in an ultra polarized society. And so how do we do that? Because it seems like, okay, from my experience, if I give an inch, people take a mile. And so I can't even defend my position without boxing gloves. Yeah, so it's a little bit difficult.
I find it's easier to defend my position when I take the boxing gloves off, actually.
Okay, all right.
I just had a conversation with someone, actually, who on the other side of the political fence, and when I can find those commonalities, or when I can find, like, how are you thinking about something? And I believe that everyone believes they have a thread of truth that they believe. Like, no matter if, you believe something that's false, you still have a thread of truth. It's the reason you believe it. Nobody goes out and says, I want to believe something that's chaotic and stupid and, nobody does that. They all believe that they're correct. So I like to find the thread of truth that they already do have, and then I just pull on it
Okay.
and just like unravel it till I can get to the point of what I believe is true.
Okay.
And there's always reasons for the things people believe. Sometimes it's an emotional reason.
Right.
You know,
That's hard for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is that happening?
Well, and I think it's why women in particular lean a little bit left, is because of the emotions. And, you know, you hear about people saying facts don't care about your feelings.
Right.
I agree with that, but
Okay.
people have feelings.
They do.
So
Even
you can't
men have
separate that.
feelings.
Yeah, so you actually do have to acknowledge that people have feelings and speak to that. And there is a truth
Okay.
that exists. You know, we talk about your truth, my truth. They're talking about feeling truth,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
All right. That makes sense to me.
Well, that's cultural too. Is even in our language, it's like, oh, I feel like this and I feel like that. When I think not too long ago we would have said, oh, I think this, I think that.
True.
But it's all about feeling. We have a really high
Yeah.
value for feeling.
And we're getting, you know, we're more psychology oriented.
Yeah.
So we have these psychology terms we throw around.
Yeah, and I don't think that's bad because
Yeah.
I enjoy that, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I like that, but I also know we shouldn't live like that phrase you about emotion. Treat them like children. Treat emotions like children. Don't stuff them in the trunk, but you don't want them driving the car either.
Yeah, that's
so
good. I never
just to
actually
be
heard that.
acknowledged.
Okay.
You never heard that?
I don't think so, but that's good.
It's
Yeah.
from a movie.
Which one is it from?
Google it. I don't know. The name
I
of the
forgot
movie,
too.
'cause I've never seen the movie, but
Yeah, but I like that because it helps me navigate other people's feelings. Because
Yeah.
my first inkling is I want you to know how I feel, and then you can let me know how you feel. But sometimes it doesn't even get that far because what I feel offends you. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, you're talking about people who are just kind of combative and like someone who won't listen to you or someone who doesn't want to be.
yeah, I think
Okay.
it's the political climate that's doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are ways we can kind of detox the environment a little bit. Or if you're talking to somebody who's on the other end of the political spectrum, you don't start with like, hey, Trump and Biden this and Trump and you know, like it's not a good plan, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
So I tell people like start with the what, not the who.
Okay, good. Yeah, I like
Because
that.
there are so many things that, you know, when we start talking about people, then there's a whole set of things that trigger people around what they think about that person, what they've been told about
wrong
that
or
person.
right. They just
Yeah.
think it, right?
Yeah. So when we can de-escalate that, and even the words we use, some of these buzzwords like woke or, you know,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, now, you know, this side has these buzzwords, that side has these, and they use them differently. So now we're using words that are different. You're talking about apples, I'm talking about oranges. But if we can just get to the essence of what we're actually talking about, usually people don't disagree as much.
Interesting.
You know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so if let's say we get into a political conversation with someone on the other side, and we get that far, we get like one thread in common. How do you keep it going?
Yeah.
Without, you know, you said we kind of have to do that dance, right?
Yeah, like I was talking to somebody on the plane just a few days ago, and complete polar opposite politically.
Nice.
And yet this person's I was like, so what do we have in common? You know, we actually went to the same church at one point.
Okay.
So it's like I was able to build upon that and go and then ask questions like, well, what do you think about this? And really what I find is usually truth is in the midst of two separate paradigms. So you have, if you think about a Venn diagram, and you have one paradigm over here, then you have another paradigm over here.
Yeah.
And right where they meet, where they overlap, is usually where truth is.
Fair.
So what I usually do is go, okay, I can start to identify what their paradigm is. Let's say they have like a psychological paradigm where everything's about feelings and authenticity and all of that.
Okay.
And that's true. There is a truth to that, right?
There is.
But then I start to introduce the other side of the paradigm, which is facts and like objectivity to truth. So it's like, I acknowledge what you're saying over here, like that feelings are real, but let's also acknowledge that this is true too, you know, and can we hold these truths in tension? And that's where I think wisdom is found.
I see.
So yeah.
And so is that why, like Christians that don't vote are just kind of standoffish, like you said, like isolationists, because that's a little bit too hard for them, or
Yeah.
they don't have the courage to engage that way?
Yeah, I think they don't have the courage. Maybe they don't have the understanding, and maybe they're afraid of doing it wrong.
Oh yeah,
You know?
that's a big reason for Christians.
Yeah.
Christians hate doing things wrong.
Yeah, and it's like you have to actually learn stuff. You know, I've actually had one friend say, like, I just go in there and I just pray. And I'm like, who should I vote for? They don't do
really?
any research. And
Really?
like,
I've never heard of that before.
Wow.
I don't know about that. You know, like that, to me, that's
Just
just
cast lots and
exactly, yeah. So it's like,
Wow.
yeah, so people don't want to do it wrong. And then, you know, because it's so ugly, no one is perfect that you're voting for.
Right.
And so
no.
then it's like Jesus is not on the ballot.
I wish he
Yeah.
was.
So you're not actually, and this is the thing, we're engaging in the world, you know, we're getting our hands dirty. You know, it's sometimes it's the lesser of two evils that, you know, we're actually, because everyone is flawed, you
Yes.
know? So, and you know, people they want to think of their lives in terms of like absolutes and yes, right and wrong, and then they get intimidated, and then they're like, well, I didn't like their political campaign, I didn't like something about them. They get a bad taste in their mouth, and then they're just like, forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, or a politician double crosses them, and then they feel like, well, why should I even vote, because I trusted this person, you know?
Right.
It's just a lot of different reasons, but I think most of it comes from political isolationism, and really, so, you know, our Greek philosophies, you know, I don't know if you've talked about dualism before on the podcast.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
Well, we will, I'm sure. But, well, now we are.
Right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, a dualistic mindset is what we inherited from, in the Western world, is what we inherited from the Greeks.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought in terms of like, you know, what is sacred and secular. They thought in terms of sacred. And so
that's where that came from.
The body is essentially bad, and the spirit can be good, you know? So, so we carried, this isn't a biblical mindset, but we carried this and we overlaid this mindset because it's culture, right? It
Western
colors
culture.
Everything we do. So we look at the Bible that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, and we try to, when God created everything to be good in the garden, but yet we separate out good and evil. You know, what's of this world is evil.
Right.
And so then we don't engage in what's of this world because we think it's going to contaminate us.
Yeah.
Instead of the biblical model is cultivate this world.
Exactly.
You have a not just a right, but you have a responsibility to cultivate.
That's right.
Speaking of the Garden of Eden, this is what God, this is our calling. This is the calling of mankind.
Yeah.
He gave us the earth to have dominion, to have authority here. He gave this to us. It's our job.
And it's funny you mentioned dualism, because the early church, they really rooted out Gnosticism, which is based on dualism.
Yes.
Like the body's bad, but the spirit's good.
Yep.
But the problem is God made our bodies. You know, God made the physical earth, like you said, to cultivate.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it because we're afraid of it.
Right.
We're afraid to get dirty, like you said.
And the people on the other side, the people of the world, I guess you would say, that are not believers, they also participate in dualism because they say you need to take God out of this.
Yeah.
Secularism.
Right. Exactly.
And really,
exactly.
you cannot separate worldviews from your life.
Yeah.
But you can pretend that you do.
Yeah, you can pretend, but it is what it is.
It's going to impact you no matter what. So, yeah.
I mean, we're here, though. We're at that point where the two polar opposites are now vying for control. And our country is very, polarized. And do you think there's hope to really, unify the country?
Absolutely. I mean, I heard somebody say one time, anytime we don't have hope, we're partnering with the enemy.
Oh, bingo.
So
bingo.
You got to have hope if you're a believer. That's what it's about. Believing.
Yeah.
Right? A believing believer.
So, Leigh, do we, to bridge the gap, do we wait till after November 5, after the Civil War begins?
Well, that's a loaded question right there. I mean, we're always supposed to be about cultivating our culture because, like you said, from the very beginning of the foundation, we were supposed to work the land, and I think part of that is cultivating our culture. So no, we're always the same, you know, we're always salt and we're always light. And this is another cool thing about salt and light. You know, where does salt come from?
The earth.
Yeah. Where does light come from?
The sun.
Above. So think about what Jesus was trying to say. He said, you know, you're supposed to bring truth, you're supposed to bring purity, wholeness, all that good stuff, but you're also supposed to bring salt, which is contextualized in the world. So he's talking about where heaven meets earth.
Yeah.
And so without, you know, some of us can bring a lot of light, but we're not very salty, and it never gets to the earth.
Right.
It never actually transforms the earth because it's not, we don't know how to be salt. And then other people can err on the side of salt and try to be relevant all day long, but they're not actually bringing any truth into the world.
Yeah.
So so it's those two paradigms coalescing into a paradox.
Yeah.
Where that's where wisdom is.
That's really good. You know, that's a challenge for our viewers because they're like of the Western mindset. So when you say tension between two things or paradox, they get mad. You know?
Because it's not black and white necessarily.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about dualism before, and like there's sacred and secular, which most people believe. So, is there like a word? Is there like a better way to be? Like, if we don't have sacred and secular, what is there?
Well, I mean, everything is spiritual.
Everything is spiritual.
You know, we are holistic human beings. We can't separate out our worldviews from our everyday life, and that's why the whole thing about education, I'm so passionate about school choice and things like that, because you know, all these teachers, they're bringing their worldview into the classroom.
Yes.
And you know, maybe they try to leave it at home or whatever, but you're going to have a worldview when you teach kids.
Yeah.
You can't not have it, you know, whether it's dualism or whether it's integrating, you know, I mean, so we have to be realistic and go like, there's no way we can just check our worldviews at the door. It's just so happens that, you know, Christians or people of faith have been targeted as like, just because we don't want to establish a religion doesn't mean, and we still don't want to do that. That's a principle. You can hold that principle securely, but also you have to have the right to live out your worldview.
Correct.
You know? Yeah,
and that makes me think, though, because there's that tension there. As a Christian, you want to, I mean, our goal is to really be fishers of men, influencers, cultivators, right?
Yeah.
So in this political climate, though, and you mentioned it, once we just do a little bit of that, now we're Christian nationalists. You know what I mean? Like now
you
we're
can be labeled
overbearing, or you know, even just stating your faith, some people think it's too much. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that Jesus was political. Right. I mean, just because their politics looked way different, they didn't separate out their faith from their politics. I mean, the part of the ruling body was the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Right. Like those were two different political parties. Yes. Yes. And then the media would come at Jesus with questions. You know, he was actually a figure. He was like a real legit figure because people followed him. Yeah. And he was a political threat. Right. You know, the Pharisees were like, "Oh, Jesus believes in resurrection of the dead. That's what we believe. Maybe we can get him on our side." Like they had him over to their house, and like he ate with tax collectors, which is another part of the political ruling body. There were the Herodians, and so we think, well, Jesus only spoke to these religious people, but the religious people were the political people. Yeah, they were. We have no concept of that.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to people who would say, well, Jesus didn't come to establish a physical kingdom, so he wasn't political?
Yeah, and so we, at the same time, we also, it doesn't matter who's on the throne, so to speak, we can still be Christians. We can we're valuing the kingdom of God above politics, but it doesn't mean politics is worth nothing. Yes. We aren't throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're just rightly ordering it and yeah, we shouldn't worship any political leader. And there is
Agreed.
there is a fine line.
Yeah.
When you
true.
when you get involved in politics, you can get so passionate that you can start putting your hope in a leader, and that can subtly replace God.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful of that.
Can I say something controversial?
You always do.
So since you mentioned that, I do notice, like on my team, the people that aren't really Christian, they get to this place where, like, I feel like they might be worshiping Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm definitely going to vote for him. You know, personally, I think he's the best choice. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it just feels like a little bit too much. Can you comment on that?
Oh, absolutely. Like, we are inherently, like, I guess, humans without God. You know, we're tribal people. Mm-hmm. And because we need to belong.
Yeah.
And so we put our leaders on pedestals because it feels good because we're made to worship.
Yeah, we're made to worship.
Yeah.
So if you don't have anything else to worship and you're scared and you want to run to something, you're going to run to a political leader you think can save you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's natural to do that. And that's why we pit each other against each other. That's why the media does it to us. Uh-huh. They use all this polarizing and, like, you know, clickbait headlines and things like that. Mm-hmm. They know they can thrive on that because that's human nature.
Right.
But we can choose a different way, and we can not click on it.
Yeah.
We can not lap it up. Mm-hmm. But you know, we have to actually be intentional to do that and to demand more of our leaders. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you go about, like, you know, like you said, you've done political campaigns, you've done your own campaign, and how do you know when it's too much?
Yeah, like I look at the dignity of humans. Like, if I'm ever degrading the inherent dignity of a person, because we were all made in God's image, if I'm ever tempted to do that, that's when I go, okay, there's the line.
Okay.
Like, my husband ran against what we believe was a politically corrupt leader who did some, you know, like, it participated, we thought, in voter fraud. She hasn't been charged yet officially, but it's something happened there. And we were just really careful, though. You know, there were other people that maybe, you know, would mock her, like just overblow it a little bit, but we were careful just to speak to the truth of it and to not be afraid of speaking the truth. Like, this is what we believe is happening and it needs to stop.
Yeah.
Like, we're defending everyone else by, you know, Jesus called out the Pharisees. He's like, what you're doing is not right. And he was pretty harsh.
He was pretty harsh.
Yes.
But, you know, he was doing it to protect other people. It was for the dignity of humanity, you know? But if we ever degrade people, like the ad hominem attacks, where it's just against the man, and just making fun of him for no, you know, then that's degrading the dignity of another human being, and I think that's where it crosses the line.
So you're appealing to the imago Dei in another person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I do troll a little bit online, and I get you. I never want to attack someone for something they didn't do, you know. But do you think it's wrong to make, like, a funny meme of something that was true? Because I do it all the time.
It's a fine line.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, and it comes down to convictions too.
Okay.
You know, like, there's some gray. I hate to admit it, but there is some gray out there. And I mean, sometimes making fun of things points to a truth.
Right.
You know, like here's an example of what we did.
Okay.
Because the person we were running against was, it seemed like she was enrolling dead voters.
Okay. Oh, that happens. I know it happens.
So we had this subtle little thing where we would say, real voters of you know, Anchorage, East Anchorage. And so we would take pictures of the real voters. So it was like, okay,
awesome.
We're a little bit of a, you know,
I like that.
Subtle sort of thing, but yeah.
Dude, okay, see, that's good. We need more of that. But anyways.
If anyone knew that was the thing, they would be like, oh, okay, we see the contrast. These are real people standing here taking a picture of you, not dead voters. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. So what we're talking about, man, it's going pretty deep into different places. Does this scare people from, like, voting or being involved in the political process, the things we just talked about?
You mean just the messiness of
Yeah.
politics. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you can be deceived so easily. I mean, people are out there buying your votes. Like
Yeah.
Alaska, for example, is a cheap date, they call it.
Okay.
Because our media market, our people, there's not very many people there.
Yeah.
So you can buy out the media market, and you can, especially statewide. So right now, like they're trying to put, bring in ranked choice voting and all these things, and so you can do a few $1 million and like pretty much inundate people, and then they can just believe whatever they're told,
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to. I mean, that's why if you start let's say you're not engaged, and then you just watch the commercials, and then you just vote how the commercials tell you to vote.
Yeah.
Like you got to do a little bit more digging, to really find out what's true. So you can be deceived. Like it is possible, but we
Right.
can't disengage just because there's a possibility that we do it wrong. Like it's better to do our best than to not do anything.
That's true. That's true.
Well, I think there's a definite intimidation factor there because people don't know which sources to check that are true because who do you even trust? So what do I even do? Like, how do we even find the truth?
Go to my ex.
Well,
Just listen to everything you say. Is that what you should do?
Yeah.
but I mean, this is another part of it because we don't have these what I call brave conversations enough. It used to be that people would sit on their porch and they would talk to the neighbors and they would kind of figure out stuff together.
I miss that.
Yeah, and that's what I think healthy and what I think is cultivating your culture is. You should be in your neighborhoods and you can do it online, but in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And just engage, and that's how we're supposed to start making decisions. Like talk to the representatives, like actually
Right.
ask them a question.
Yes.
And don't be intimidated by them because a lot. Can I say this? I don't know if I should
Yes,
say.
just say it.
Yes.
A lot of them aren't the smartest people in the world.
Yeah.
I said it in a nice way. I mean, you think they would be,
Yeah.
but you realize pretty quickly, like they're not that intimidating.
That's awesome.
They're
Good
people.
point.
Just like you
They're
and me.
people. They're fallible people, and some of them are corrupt. But we don't know unless we talk to him and we ask the Lord about him and we ask the hard questions and we risk something. We have to
Right.
risk looking kind of silly, and maybe asking a stupid question, but maybe it's not stupid.
Right. Maybe it's not.
If you have that question, then
Yeah,
5
maybe
more
other people
probably
have
the
it.
same question.
Yeah.
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 So when we engage in politics, like let's say I was a Christian that was scared, confused, and didn't want to get dirty, but now you convinced me that it's my Christian responsibility to, do my research and pick the best candidate. Where do I start?
I mean, I don't know if you know that there's community councils that happen there's small grassroots things you can get involved in. I know some of it can be painful
Okay.
to get involved in because, I don't know, you might not be represented very well. But the other part of it is, it's kind of on an emotional level. Like you do need to develop a little bit of emotional maturity to be able to engage well. And
That's a
you
good
can't
point.
just get triggered by every little thing. Like you have to actually develop wisdom and to develop and courage. So I think about that as another tension. We have people who are very courageous and they run headlong into this stuff
Yeah.
and they put on their boxing gloves or whatever, but they don't. And sometimes God can call you to just a courage moment, right?
Right.
Where you get up and testify at the school board or whatever. But a lot of times they don't even seek wisdom. They're just like, we just got to be courageous. We just got to fight. And then we lose because we do something stupid. And so, you have to, and then there are other people on the other end where they're like, well, I want to be wise, but they overthink everything and they're actually not operating in courage.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm asking Christians through my book, especially, to go, you need to cultivate both.
Yes.
And that's what Jesus did when he
I
answered
agree.
the questions that were asked of him and all this. That he knew when to pick something up and he knew when to lay it down. He knew when the right time was to do things. And there is a lot of gray area. So it's like,
Right.
we can't get out of this thing without growing in those areas.
Yeah. So you're saying know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
about
all in.
it's not just about the little battle. And
Yeah.
don't let people suck you in because And then if you have a bad experience with it and they suck you in and you get all whatever, then you might not want to do it again because you went in there unprepared.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I would
Okay.
go find somebody who's maybe operating in another believer that's been in this realm who can maybe help you.
That's good. That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah, and say like, put me to work. Like, what can I do? Maybe I can just fold envelope, stuff envelopes or something, and just learn how it works a little bit. But even Christian leaders, like, you do have to be careful because they can lead you down a wrong path too.
That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
Mike Pence.
They can get toxically tribal.
Anyways, since we're talking about this, do you think that 32 million Christians who don't vote have an effect on the election? Because I do.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are people who are carrying the roots of our nation. You know, there was Christianity in the foundation of our nation. Not that it was the only thing that found our nation, but so yeah, we need to engage. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I wanted to talk about this because I do feel that if they vote, then it would be better overall, no matter who they voted for.
Yeah.
Like left, right, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I think it's better for the nation if the Christians, I mean, the vast majority do vote, but 32 million still can sway an election.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's important that they, I heard it put like this, like, choose the right, don't choose the perfect candidate, but choose the one that's able to win. You don't always have, like, so when it talks about, I think, I can't remember exactly where it is, but when it talks about, choose capable men in the Bible, when, Paul, I think, is talking about that. Capable means they have a chance of winning.
Okay.
So there's another,
not bandwagoning, but people who can actually win and do a good job.
Who have the ability to
like they're
win, but also to do the job.
Yeah, to do the job and to So sometimes people, because their candidate isn't like right on this thing, and then or isn't perfect on it. You're not picking someone you're in love with. You're picking the best world that you want to live in.
Yeah.
Like the better world, not even the best, but the better world of the people that are able to win.
Okay, gotcha.
So normally you have like two top candidates that are able to win.
Yes.
And so you don't want to throw away your vote, by just picking the person that you really like, that you would want to have in your church, like you want to pick, and to me, that's good stewardship of your vote. I mean, that could be controversial, but that's what I believe.
I think that's a good idea because we need capable people to hold high office.
And we're not electing pastor of the United States. We're electing president of the United States.
Yeah.
President. Yeah.
Because you can have somebody who has a great heart who can't do it.
Yeah.
Is it and that in difficult times, in times that are not very Christian. You're going to have choices that are not ideal.
Okay, so I have a question. Like a lot of Christians nowadays say that we're being persecuted, and like I know a lot of Christians in other countries who are really being badly persecuted. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's true here, or do you think that we kind of have like a victim mentality?
Well, I mean, we've enjoyed a long season of privilege in our country. That's another low.
My audience doesn't like that word.
I know, and I'm calling this pride and privilege for a reason. Privilege isn't a bad word. Like it just is what it is. So privilege just means that you're able to do something that maybe others can't. So like we've had a long stretch of our country being majority Christian.
Yeah.
And so anytime you're in the majority, you have privilege. So we've enjoyed that, and we've also enjoyed a lot of peace, relative peace in our nation for a lot of years, most of our lifetimes, right? So what we're experiencing is new to us,
Right.
But it's not necessarily new, and it's not even new in our country.
Good point.
I mean,
Good
even
point.
though there was a Christian background, there were other wars and things that happened. So, we're experiencing this volatility, and it's so weird to us, right?
Yes.
But it's not new to the human condition.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
You're
not,
right.
and it's not new in the Bible or anything like that. So yeah, there's a continuum of like people really being persecuted, for their faith, like being killed and all of that. But it doesn't mean that we don't look at how we're losing some of the privileges that we've had, and it's not like we don't want to become victims.
Yeah.
Like or look at ourselves as just victims, but there is again that tension of like we do have to stand up for what our rights are.
Yes.
Our right to
Absolutely.
have our faith, and our right to not be denied certain things because of our faith.
Yes.
And that's a courage piece. Like I actually was put up for a commission that it was in our city, and it was for the women's commission first, and then I tried also to be on the education, or what was it? No, the library commission.
Okay.
And it was something that normally former candidates do as a way to serve their community, and it's not paid or anything. It's not like I'd have all this power or anything.
Too bad.
But my opponent and some other people really did not want me on that commission, and they brought out some of my podcast episodes and some of my comments about my Christian faith and my belief system.
Okay.
They brought that to the forefront and said, this is why she's not qualified to be on our city commission, because her viewpoints are not acceptable, and my viewpoints are Christian viewpoints.
Right, of course.
And so that's not okay. Like
That is not okay.
And I don't care if you're a Christian or if you're somebody of a different faith or somebody with no faith.
Yeah.
We should all be able to come to the table with diversity of viewpoints and serve our community. Right? Within reason,
So you're
you don't want to be a
saying
maniac, but
they use a podcast where you're expressing your faith against you?
Yeah.
That's dumb.
Yeah. Where I said the one thing that I said was women were created to give life. And
That's not wrong.
That was an unacceptable viewpoint to be on the women's commission.
But didn't everybody on that commission come from a woman?
Yep. So
Yeah.
it was pretty surprising because
Okay.
I didn't think that they would stoop to that level, But that's just a small, like, I'm not saying I'm like a victim now or whatever, but it's just a small example of how our rights are being eroded.
Yeah.
And we do have to hold fast to, like, this isn't okay.
Right.
That our rights are being eroded. At the same time, we're not victims. We're victors in Christ, and
That's
we're
right.
not even surprised when it happens, because
Yep.
it happens all over the Bible that there's persecution. So we shouldn't be surprised as though something strange were happening to
That's
us.
right. I mean, even Jesus spoke to the religious leaders who were experts at the law, right? The Pharisees and Sadducees, and told them, you who killed the prophets and the ones sent by God, right? And then he went on to teach them.
Yeah.
But he wasn't afraid to speak truth to power.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, for us, our church has to keep moving, because every time we find an awesome place to have church at, our political opponents start calling the landlord and saying there's a Christian nationalists meeting in your building, or domestic terrorists, or whatever they say. They just say nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Why do people cave into that, though? Because we're not any of that.
Why do which side?
Like,
which
so-
Business owners, why would business owners not
Yeah.
want be intimidated by that?
Because it feels
And
like
would
persecution
just
to me.
push us away.
toxic tribalism?
Ah.
Because then you're associated, and then like the whole shunning happens.
Yeah.
Just like the Amish shun people or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I forgot about
that's what
Amish.
cancel culture is
Yeah.
basically like, and so you have shame involved in that whole scenario, and that's what toxic tribalism thrives on, shame.
Right.
And so if you feel shamed or intimidated, it produces like a flight or flight response. Like, I know I've been intimidated, and it's like, whoa, that is not of God.
Yeah.
Anytime you're intimidated. And so that's why you have to come at it with courage. Like, you have to be like, no, I'm not going to allow myself to go to that place of fear, intimidation. I'm going to live my life. And
Right.
yeah. So we're in a moment where we do have to cultivate courage more than we ever did before.
Yeah, I agree with
I
you.
mean, you're talking about like business owners, and I think about business owners a lot because they have it's their livelihood on the line.
Yeah.
You know, so that definitely takes a lot of courage, not just courage to have your name behind a belief or a statement to the public,
Yeah.
but courage because you can lose your livelihood
And I
for
mean,
your family.
Yeah, but like there's an incremental thing that happens, and who was it before the Nazis took over Germany? And he's like, they weren't coming for me, basically.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I didn't engage, and it was a pastor who said this.
Yeah.
And then they said first they came for the socialists, then they came, and I forget the order of
Isn't
all.
this in here?
It's in there,
Yeah, the communists.
Well,
and then
Niemöller, I think is his
Yeah.
last name, but he said, and then they came for me, and there was no one left to save me.
Yeah.
Basically, like.
right.
And so it's like,
exactly.
yeah, we have to look out for each other too, and
Yeah.
even the people who disagree with us, even like Muslims. Like we have to stand up for our right, for human dignity.
You know, that's funny you mentioned that because I worked with a Muslim when we got one of the school boards to make sure the parents are notified if their children want to change gender. It was a Muslim man that,
Yeah.
we locked arms and said, hey, we'll settle our differences later after we win this one. Because that's what we had in common was
Yep.
we didn't want the schools to, mess with their kids in that way and,
Yeah.
and teach them things that are against our faith and
Yeah.
stuff. So
You-
that was cool.
Yeah, you could disagree with someone all day long, but you're defending their right to say
Yeah.
what they have to say.
I'm actually pretty down for that because it shows our true Christian ways when we defend someone who disagrees
Yeah,
with us.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I mean, I want to open up the conversation about privilege because
Okay.
this is really a key, and obviously it's a key to my book, which is why I put it in the title.
Yeah.
But privilege, we think about that in negative terms, and we have this topsy-turvy view as if anybody who has any privilege it's a negative thing because you must be lording it over people, or you must be.
Yeah. That's what's assumed.
Yeah, that's what's assumed.
Yeah.
So, but really, the essence of what privilege is that you've been afforded something of power. You've been, and you could look at it as dominion or whatever.
Yeah.
You're in a position, whether it's through money, through your race, through anything. It's not the privilege that is the problem unless you're not using your privilege for the benefit of all.
Yeah.
So think about like Queen Esther when she was put into a place of privilege. She went from being an orphan girl to being put in the king's, right next to the king. And she could have said, "Oh, I'm so privileged. I'm such a horrible person because I'm privileged," and
She could have said that,
not used it
but
for the
then
benefit of
her people would die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They would have died.
So she could have looked at it that way, or she could have, been pompous about her privilege and only used it for her benefit, not cared about them.
Right.
Like, there are so many ways she could have mishandled her privilege.
Yeah.
But she recognized that her privilege was not just for herself, but it was for other people around her. And that's what we all have to realize in our own lives is that we all have measures of privilege. Whether it's because you're pretty or
The pretty
because
privilege.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a real thing.
I think it's more real than people realize.
Oh, it's real. I know it is.
And I mean, there's or whether you're a part of like, depending on what racial group or what your background is, how you talk.
Yeah, how you
Like
talk.
that can give you privilege with certain people groups that
Yeah.
other people don't have. And so it's like
That's why Kamala Harris keeps changing accents.
so it's like, if it's the not using your privilege well, that's the problem. Or, so it's not that you have privilege. So when we keep pushing off our privilege, then we're not taking our responsibility seriously.
Good point. Yeah,
So-
I agree.
So that's why you can use it in a good way.
It kind of goes hand in hand with false humility, doesn't it?
It does, for sure. And I talk about that in the last chapter about how, Christians are so terrified of pride, which
Right.
is good. Like we don't want to be prideful, but at the same time, we have gone into this place of false humility because we want to look humble,
right.
but it's not humility.
It's not.
And it's actually pushing off of our responsibility.
Uh-huh.
And so we're like, well, I can't do anything. I'm just so-and-so, and it's this kind of like wimpy thing.
Yeah.
But it it abdicates us from our responsibility, and that's why we do
right.
it. And,
Yeah.
and so it's actually a form of pride in and of itself. So, I could have said, people wanted me to run for office, and I didn't necessarily want to, but it was like, I was like, it's my duty, because there wasn't anybody at the time to do it. So I had to step up, and it was the most humble thing I could have done to
Right.
put myself out there
Yes.
in the public eye, risking a lot,
Uh-huh.
and that's true humility,
I
is being
agree.
willing to rise up when you need to rise up.
That's
which
right.
is what Esther did too. She rose up in that moment.
So would you think the Christians that don't vote are doing the same thing? They have false humility, right? Like,
Could be.
oh, I don't want to be involved because it's so messy. I
I'm
don't
not
want to
smart
dirty.
enough. I don't know anything. Oh,
I don't want to
well.
accidentally sin by voting wrong.
Exactly.
Right?
I don't
Yeah.
want to vote for the wrong person to make it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like we just throw up our hands. It's learned helplessness.
Yeah.
We throw up our hands and go, well, oh well.
Yeah. And then we're
God's in
wondering.
control.
God's in control.
Yeah, that's the one I hear all the time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, he put you in charge of certain things.
Yeah.
He's in control, yes, but he puts you in charge of certain things. And
Yeah.
if you're not taking responsibility for what you're in charge of, then whose fault is that?
Yeah. And God said, like, he came to co-labor with us.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't about just him doing everything for us.
That's right. And I think Christians that don't vote, it helps people that want to persecute Christians. You know what I mean? Like, it just gives them more leeway to say, well, they're not
True. Yeah.
sharing their views. They're not
And
letting their voice be heard. So I'm going to talk for them.
And there's so much more you can do than vote.
Yeah.
Actually, there's what is it? 3.5% rule, or the 3%. It's about that many people that actually steer everything.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, around 3%. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's like, there's only a small group of people that are actually doing everything. Like in my corner of the city, there wasn't really anyone stepping up to leadership in certain areas.
Yeah.
So I became district chair of our area because no one was engaging, and a lot of it was a low information voter area and stuff, and so it's like I'm looking around and I'm going, there's a dearth of leadership. Like there's no one. It's like I can do better than no one.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So even though I wasn't perfect and I didn't know a lot, I could still do better than nothing. And so
absolutely.
So you have to recognize your duty when there's, in the wake of even bad leadership or whatever, you're going, hey, I've got to do something. I can't do everything.
Yeah.
But I can do something. And so even if you just take a little step toward doing more than even voting, like going to a community council meeting, whatever it is. A lot of people don't even know there are community council meetings.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
Just go to a school board meeting, something.
Yeah.
You're going to have more power than most people.
Good
in
point.
the room. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what do you think about people who just they don't want any part of it though? Like
it's not fun.
It's not. That's the thing though.
It's not
fun.
Like going to those meetings is usually really brutal.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I think I said something on Facebook recently. I was like, it's a privilege to say you don't care about politics.
Right.
Yeah.
Because someday politics is going to come to your door and demand something of you. When people are getting killed and you have to go to battle or whatever, that's politics.
It is politics.
And so either you care now or you're going to be forced to care later.
That's right.
So which will it be? And how dissatisfied will we get before we engage? Like how far does it have to go? And that's my only question for believers is how far does it actually have to come into our lives? Do they have to start taking our kids away before we engage?
I hope not. That's why I'm involved.
Yeah.
Because I love my kids.
It's like, we all have a different threshold, but let's engage now before it comes to our door.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we really get persecuted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, my head's not cut off yet, but that's okay. I'd rather have it on.
I can still watch TV, so I'm good.
Yeah, I can watch TV. I can go to the grocery.
I still have my smart device. And
Yeah. So we're running out of time, but what would you say to I say someone on the other side of the aisle, and like let's say there was a group of them, and if you're on the conservative side, what would you say to them to make a bridge?
I mean, it's an individual person that I'd be talking to, but I think I just want people to lean into a question,
Okay.
just lean into like the what ifs, and maybe like have a conversation with someone before you make a judgment on them,
Okay.
and especially other believers. I think this book actually really resonates, I found, with believers
Okay.
that are on the other political side of the spectrum.
Okay, good.
Because what I'm doing is I'm trying to ground us into truths we all believe from the Bible without using the rhetoric that's going to pit us against each other.
Okay.
So
good.
if we start talking about the what with each other more, I think we're going to find like that we learn a lot and that we can give and take. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me, because the times where I actually am not using boxing gloves with a political opponent is when we both agree on something. Like our what or our why, I guess, would be, we care about people.
Yeah.
Right? Because like the political opposite of me would care about the poor.
Yes.
Would care about
We care about
minorities.
people, right.
And then I go, well, me too, because I'm one.
Yep.
And then, oh, by the way, I'm an immigrant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, even liberalism, classical liberalism is actually good, but even liberalism, all these thoughts come from a Judeo-Christian background, just like the right and the left, they both come from Judeo-Christian.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, nobody likes racism.
Yeah, unless you're like a real racist.
Yeah, but it's
really
just,
evil.
it's very not cool. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not.
Yeah.
That's why calling someone a racist is
Yeah.
It's a bad thing.
terrifying.
I don't
why
think
it
we
works.
could be one because we're married.
That's another conversation.
Another conversation.
Nellie
This
just
is the
sighs.
best podcast ever. Yeah, she just sighs. But
I love her.
but on that note, Leigh, this was an awesome conversation.
It's just like being in our
I
living
enjoyed
room.
your guys' conversation. Thanks.
Natalie's just missing her laptop. She can type on more.
Yeah. So, Leigh, would you come back to our podcast the next time you're in California?
Maybe. Yeah. I
Sweet.
mean,
Maybe. We got a maybe.
I have to be political about, my
Okay.
measured responses.
Okay, measured responses. I can go off the rails, but not you. All right. Well, you guys, thanks for watching, and tune in next week. Hopefully, we're not in Civil War, and we'll have a good time then. All right.
All right.
God bless. Bye.
Bye.